Perfect, and we're live. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Fantastic, wonderful, and welcome everybody to our first Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. My name is Cindy Page, and I will call the meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. Being that this is our first committee, I would just like to take a moment for everybody to take a minute to introduce yourselves and welcome the committee. So like I said, my name is Cindy Page, and I am the clerk for the Township of Cavan-Monaghan.
My name is Bridget Ayad. I am the Economic Development and Communications Officer for the Township of Cavan-Monaghan.
Kyle Phillips, I'm the Chief Building Official for Cavan-Monaghan.
Lisa Crawford, I am a volunteer. I come from 10 years in the nonprofit sector, raising funds for social services, the environment, and the
I'm Ryan Huntley, the Deputy Mayor of the Township.
I'm Kath D'Amico. I'm new to the committee and I am a fairly new resident of the township, I'll be approaching our 2-year anniversary in June, and I work for Trent University.
I'm Joanne Key. We moved here in September and I work in the financial industry.
And I'm Manny Borges. I actually work for the Canada Post that you love and so near and dear to your heart. So I'll be the brunt of the ire.
Hi, I'm Leslie Bilcox. I am also a relatively new resident to Millbrook, and I have worked most of my career in the utility sector.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for the introductions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the agenda. And each of our motions, when we have a hybrid meeting, which you would have reviewed in your procedural bylaw, which is item 5.2, and we will get to that. When we have a hybrid meeting, any of our motions need to be a recorded vote. So I will go through and I will ask you to vote on each of the motions so that we're all clear, and then it will just be logged in the minutes. The first item that we have up is the approval of the agenda. So before you is the agenda as it's presented. We generally don't like to make amendments if it can be prevented, because then the team or the outside people have an opportunity to review it. So the agenda before you does not have any amendments, and it is as presented. So what we need is a mover and a seconder. Perfect. Kat. And a seconder. Perfect. So then I'm going to complete what's called a recorded vote. We have them all written down. Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Yes.
Joanne Key.
Yes.
Leslie Bilcox.
Yes.
Lisa Crawford. Yes. Manny Borges.
Yes.
Kath D'Amico. Perfect. And that's carried. I apologize. I should have noted, we do have an additional member, Craig on the fry stuff, and he unfortunately has sent his regrets and he's not able to attend today. Sorry, I've lost my lips. Just give me a minute here, mother speaker. All right, so the next item on our agenda is called to declare your declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. So ultimately what that means is if you have, or an item comes up on the agenda that relates to money to you. So if you have an indirect or a direct relation to money is ultimately the easiest way to sum up what a pecuniary interest is. So on the agenda items that you have before you today, does anybody believe that they have a pecuniary interest?
Do not believe so.
No. Leslie?
No.
So there's no pecuniary interest noted at this moment. Great. If you find as you go through the agendas, please make sure that you note it either prior to, you can reach out to me and fill out the pecuniary interest form, or you can make note at the beginning of the meeting and identify what the item is. We always hold a place order for number 4, which is the closed session. We do not have any closed session items, but if something occurs and we do need to go into closed session, that's the item of which we would need to do that. Generally, if we go into closed session, we will make sure that the item is identified so the public knows why we're going into closed session. As we noted today, there will not be any closed session items. Now we will start with our committee orientation. So everybody was circulated a copy of the agenda, and in it is all of the committee orientation. The first item is our Sustainability Advisory Committee terms of reference. As we discussed, this is a new committee. The Sustainability Advisory Committee is a committee of the Township of Cavan-Monaghan Council. to promote sustainable practices throughout the community with regard to energy use as well as climate change adaptation mitigation initiatives. If there's any questions about the terms of reference, we can talk about it. Otherwise, I'll go through each of the committee orientation items, and then at the very end, we will just take a motion to receive them for information. Any questions? All right, so our next item, 5.2, is our procedural bylaw. So it's bylaw number 2023-08. This bylaw is a bylaw that we use to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of our council and committee meetings. If there's anything in here, or if there's any occurrence that occurs during the meeting that is not addressed in this document, it will be, as we spoke about, addressed in the Robert's Rules of Order. If there's any questions about the procedural bylaw, we can answer them. But as we go through the meetings, if there's any questions, don't hesitate. No, okay. So our next item is item 5.3, which is our accessibility, understanding accessible customer service. As we go through the brochure, and I'd just like to speak as well, now that we're over 10,000 people in the Township of Cavan-Monaghan, we are going to be creating what's called an Accessibility Advisory Committee. It will become a new committee of council, and staff are hoping to bring that to council in early summer. And part of that will be an opportunity to review our IARS and all of our different accessibility documents that we currently have in place and what we've completed to tasking, where we can improve. When you read through the brochure, if anybody on this committee or anybody externally has any accessibility concerns, they're more than welcome to come to us, and we can provide whatever accommodations that they need to try to help with that. If there's any questions about, providing different sizes of font or anything like that, that's kind of what this guideline speaks to. Ensuring everybody lives in a physical barrier-free environment, that's for sure, and communication barrier-free. Any questions on that? Okay,
No.
so our next item is 5.4, which is legislation that was brought into place, and it's called Bill 168, and it's respect in the workplace policy. This is a policy that was established to ensure that everybody is treated equally and with respect. If there's any questions on that? No? Any questions?
No, sorry, no.
No, no problem at all. Wonderful. So what I will need is a motion from the council to accept the committee orientations for the Sustainability Advisory Committee for information. And a mover, perfect. Seconder, perfect. And now we need a recorded vote. So Joanne Key. Yes. Leslie Bilcock,
Yes.
Lisa Crawford. Yes. Manny Borges,
Yes.
Kath D'Amico.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Yes.
So now we're on to item 6, which is the election of our officers. So what I will need now is a motion to appoint a chair for Sustainability Advisory Committee for the 2022-2026 term of council. Do we have anybody that would like to put their name forward to be the chair?
I have no issue with that. My only concern is my schedule. As I stated, I'm with Canada Post. I'm their staffer and supervisor downtown. So I have, right now I'm a shift 1, so I'm midnight to 8. So now is when I'm usually sort of resting and eventually catch my nap. So depending on when there may be an occurrence to meet, especially with other
The chair can't make them, even the vice chair can.
Okay, but other than that, I have no issue with that. So if there won't be anyone else, I'll try and shine a brighter light or a nicer light on good old Canada Post again, and I'll succumb.
Great. So Manny's going to put his name forward. Do we have a mover to support that? Perfect. Deputy Mayor Huntley and a seconder. Perfect. Great. So we'll just need a recorded vote for that. So Leslie Bilcox,
Yes.
Lisa Crawford,
Yes.
Manny Borges.
May I vote on that? Is that a conflict?
Definitely. No, there's no conflict.
All right, I'll bend my own arm.
Hannah
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Hunt. Oh, no, yeah, Deputy Mayor Huntley
Yes.
and Joanne Key.
Yes.
That's carried. Perfect. So now we need the appointment of the vice chair. Do we have anybody that would like to be our vice chair?
I will, I guess I can put my name forward. I just wonder now with Manny, some of your potential restrictions with your schedule. I don't know if I would be the best fit, just given my schedule right now. That as I mentioned, I may not be able to attend if there's other subcommittee requirements.
If it doesn't work, then we can always, you can always step down as vice chair and we can always reassign
Yeah,
somebody else. So I mean, we can give it a test run for a while and if it's not working out.
Like I'll be available, I'll be available, like, I get home around 10-ish, so anytime from 10 to 4 or so, which I'm pretty sure would probably cover the majority. It would just be evenings that may be a little more stretched out, and that depends on what evening. If it's a Friday, for instance, it's not a big problem because I'm done at 8. So, or notice, or,
Yeah.
I have a big, wonderful blanket of window there that things can come up and I can simply change my schedule so it's not that bad.
And as we noted in the procedural bylaw as well, if we need to do a hybrid meeting, we can do that if that accommodates schedules better. So definitely that's something that we can look at. Do you think that would work then, Leslie, if we?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely happy to try. And then if they're, down the road, if it's not working, then we can reassess.
Correct. And we as staff help build the agendas, we do all the minutes, we do all of that. So basically the role of the chair and the vice chair is, to run the meeting, conduct the meeting, but also to help build the agenda. So we would do that in collaboration with staff and with the team. So good. Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder for that. I'm gonna move to Leslie, perfect. Seconder, Key, perfect. All right, so then we recorded vote. Lisa Crawford.
Yes.
Manny Borges.
Yes.
Kath D'Amico.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Yes.
Joanne Key.
Yes.
Leslie Bilcox.
Yes.
And that's carried. So I am going to transfer the chair to Manny, but it's not going to be till we get to general business, and then I'll guide you through how we go from there. I will provide you a copy of the recorded vote as well, just to make your life easier when we go through it. So the next item on the agenda is item 7, which is our minutes. So because this is a brand new advisory committee, we don't have any historical minutes, but as we move forward, this is where they will be. And then what we will need to do is take a motion to approve the minutes as they're presented, or if there's any amendments that you feel that we need to make a change, we could make the change there. The next item would be number 8. And number 8 is reports. And so this is where staff will generally bring some form of a report. If there's any information that we need to give to you, this is where staff would add that on the agenda. General business is the item that we're turning to now. And general business is where we will add the items that we want to talk about during the meeting or information that we want to provide to you. So I think now would be appropriate time, if you feel comfortable, Manny, for me to transfer the chair to you. So it's officially at 1:18 p.m.
Get them down.
Yeah, if you want down, yeah. So for today, I can call it the recorded vote.
Yes,
And
please.
as like for the next couple meetings, if you want to, 100%, we're here to support you and to help everyone through this. So I think for now, I'll probably turn it over to you, Ms. Ayat, to start to speak to our items.
Okay, so the first one is, I think, if we kind of go back to the original purpose of the committee, I think the two key things were our energy management plan and our Cabin Monaghan climate change action plan. Were kind of the two key focuses that we saw for this committee. The energy management plan, it's outdated. It's almost 10 years old. So we really need to update it. It was actually created prior to the climate change action plan that we did, which I'll kind of walk you through a little bit of the history around that plan. But this energy conservation and demand management plan does not include elements of the climate change action plan, so it needs to incorporate that. It is kind of a broad-based plan. So it just needs to, there are some cleaning up, there's some administrative things, there's names and positions that don't exist anymore, or the people who've moved on. So I think what Kyle and I had figured we would do, and this is kind of a tag team between Kyle, because he is responsible for the reporting. So there is a reporting component that goes with this plan. Annually or every 2 years?
Annually.
Annually.
It's
So
behind 2 years to report. So this year we'll be reporting on 2021's
yeah.
energy data.
So we are required by the ministry to report our energy management annually. And so Kyle, he does that. The building department is responsible for doing that. So what we thought in terms of moving forward with the update of this plan, I think we thought that Kyle and I would kind of take a first stab at it and do a draft and bring it to this committee for the next meeting. Give you a chance to kind of digest what's there. We can kind of bring you back some recommended changes that we see and get comment. You may have something that you would like to see included, or you may have questions, and then we can discuss that then. If you need us to bring back another draft, we can do that. Alternatively, what we can do is then move forward and take it forward to council. And this can be kind of one of our guiding policy documents that helps kind of shape what we want to do as a committee.
Can I ask a question? Am I allowed to ask a question right now, or do I have to wait?
I think Kath had a question first,
Okay.
then you, Leslie, but
Perfect, okay.
you
And
two
are
fight
you-
it out.
In terms of formalities, is this okay?
Yeah, so normally you just say through you, Chair, I would like to ask a question, and then, or
Okay.
through the chair, yeah, it's generally the format. It's better to ask questions while we go through it. Sometimes I find at a committee level, it's more real time.
I just seek point of clarification that we were provided the climate change action plan, but we were not provided with the existing energy management plan.
I think it was part of the package.
It is part of the
Yeah.
package.
Is it
Yeah.
part of that?
Yeah, it's page 39.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
My apologies.
I think it's right before
the-
in your package, yeah.
Oh,
It's not very long, it's not a.
Okay. Okay, thank
It's
you.
not as fancy and picturesque as the climate change.
Do you have a
action
copy?
plan.
If not, there's right in that package, right there, page 39.
Okay, great, thank you.
Very bottom on the left, yeah.
We thought that, you want to take a minute or a month or whatever to digest it. So we're certainly not expecting you to have gone through this for this particular meeting. But if you have, great. And you have
Because now it's outed that I haven't.
No, no, I didn't mean that.
I move that we all share the load and state as follows, that none of us have read it, and everyone will be in the same boat.
I think Leslie did have a question.
Yeah.
so-
I did, because I did read it. And I'm wondering, I guess really two things, and it's not necessarily something that you may be able to answer right now, and perhaps I can email you. But I'm really wondering around the reporting mechanism. So like how you guys track your energy usage, how you report it. And then in addition, I noticed that there's a cost savings estimate within your existing plan. So how, like what the method is with regards to how you understand cost savings.
So I can answer that. So the reporting is changing constantly. So in 2014, the requirements came out really quick, telling us as of this year, you now have to report on all your facilities. From 2 years ago, it has to be entered through through a ministry portal, and that portal has changed several times. First, they just sent us an Excel sheet that we had to fill out and submit. Now it's kind of like, a portal hub that you fill in the information. it's really, all that it really is going through all your billing, which is a bit of a nightmare. Because
Yeah.
we have wastewater treatment plants that are ran by different companies. We have libraries that are ran by the library and not in-house here. And then we have our own facilities. So we, as of right now, roughly, we've got about 15 facilities that we have to collect all our hydro billing on and all our Enbridge billing, go through and try to figure out the actual energy consumption of each month and add them all up and tally them. It gets really tricky because billing to a municipality is not very clean. We get,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm talking right there, but we get all kinds of street lights, and there's probably about, I don't know, 40 or 50 actual bills that we have to figure out what facility they're for.
Mhm.
And then catch up bills, it's really not as clean as just a residential bill, so it's a lot of work, but it's pretty rudimentary how we actually calculate it and report it. So
Okay,
it's that every year, and it's due by July 1st every year. So right now, we're trying to go through and add up all of our facilities right now to get this year's reported for, plus you're going back 2 years.
Right. So it's not just, you're not just reporting CO emissions, you're reporting energy consumption.
That's right.
Okay,
Not deadly accurate either, because it's their sheet, and like I said, it does change almost every reporting
Yeah.
cycle. It happens, but it converts the whatever we're reporting into kilojoules and then into greenhouse gases. So we barely get any feedback on what we submitted. It just has to be reported.
has to be done. So I guess my next question is, within the umbrella of both doing the climate action plan and then also the demand management plan, is it within like the scope of the committee to explore like processes and reporting and how those can become like more efficient?
Yeah, to be totally honest, from my standpoint, this was the start. Bridge and I have discussed making this committee for a couple of years.
Wow.
We knew we had to update this, so not that it's a moving target, but there's opportunities to have this committee do a couple different jobs. This
Yeah.
was the starting point, and the
Yeah, and if I
Climate change
can
action
speak to the
plan?
climate change
Yeah.
action plan, I think that is maybe an area where we haven't been strong, is the reporting side of it. And we'd like to see that strengthened, because we
Yeah.
really want to send that message to the community.
Yeah,
And if the committee can be a guiding light in that, for lack of a better word, that would be greatly appreciated.
okay. That was just that I have a few other questions, but maybe I can email you them. They're just more specific. But that was one thing when I was looking through the plan that kind of came up as a theme for me that I felt would be a good fit for the committee, was really creating like a reporting mechanism and like how we calculate savings, and, you know, to try to enhance that so that that can really enhance how we manage our energy usage.
Yeah, for sure. And just another thing to add to that is those two requirements came in at the same time. The having to have an energy conservation demand management plan and the reporting were kind of two different things. And they said these have to be done, and it was kind of like an immediate thing.
Yeah,
So every municipality did, especially small rural municipalities that were short-staffed,
yeah,
try to grab a template from another place, tweak it so that it worked for them, and get it in by the due date. So it wasn't
Yeah.
very fruitful
Mhm.
thing to
Yeah.
do. Like, did it really get any energy conservation?
Yeah.
We've kind of put together everything that we thought we were going to do in the next few years.
Yeah.
So as you read through it, you'll see, if you read other townships, you'll probably see they're all pretty similar.
yeah,
Just wanted it to be something more fruitful than just words that were.
absolutely. Yeah.
Hence
I think,
the-
yeah, that's good. That's one of my things is, you know, we're doing these plans, which is really good step, but then to know if we're really achieving our goals and making progress, we need that reporting piece to really
Yeah.
couple with that.
For sure. Mhm.
I'm done asking questions now, sorry.
Keep it. Okay. So did you want a few more minutes, or did you want me to move into the climate change action plan and kind of give you a bit of background on that? That's gonna be part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just have a question. The report mentions benchmarks, and so the reporting back that you're going to do is going to be report back on benchmarks you had set.
The only problem with it is that was the concept, and I'm hoping we're moving forward, but that's where we go with this. We never really did compare to see, because we've added on some buildings too, so you don't get that feedback. They've sent a couple things back, but really, we haven't had the staffing today to go, okay, what did we do this year? What did we do? What did we add on? What did we actually cut? Like, all these projects, how much did they actually save us? We haven't gotten to that point. So as far as, did we hit those benchmarks?
Does that have to be independently audited, or is it, relying on your paperwork?
The plan had to be in and the reporting has to be done.
Well, I get what we
Send it
are,
off,
I'm
yeah.
talking about forward, like this is.
Oh, yeah.
Is it something that should be, like, are there energy auditors out there that we should be looking at, or?
There are.
Yep. So that is a whole nother thing that you can, and in there it kind of speaks to auditing our buildings every so often. We haven't got to that point either. So this is kind of should be done.
Yeah.
Needs dollars.
What? Money?
And moving on. So I think as part of 9.1, there is a 9.11, the Greater Peterborough Area Climate Change Action Plan. So that was also included in your package. I'm going to take you through a little bit of a history of the Climate Change Action Plan. The Greater Peterborough area is part of that history. So our local plan came out of that. So Cindy just noted to me that she does need a motion on receiving the update for Energy Conservation Management Plan.
Both of them combined in one.
Both of
So
them
whenever we're
combined in one.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, I'm speaking in turn here.
No, we'll find our way.
So you're asking for.
You have to ask.
We have for a
Can you
motion.
move that?
And based on that action, then we will ask for a motion based on what has already been brought forward. We'll go through the process of the vote. If you may, if you sing us out one at a time, and we'll cast our votes then.
Perfect. We need a mover.
Mover.
Perfect.
There we go. Cass. Seconder.
Seconder.
There we are.
Perfect, wonderful.
Okay, so we'll move
Manny
on.
Borges.
Nailed it.
Yes.
Cass, perfect. Deputy Mayor Huntley,
Yes.
Tranky,
Yes.
Leslie Bilcock,
Yes.
and Lisa Crawford.
Yes.
Perfect. Carried.
Hey, guys, I should know better. Okay, so moving on to the Climate Change Action Plan, you'll probably see me kind of refer to my laptop here. I did do a presentation to the St. Paul's Anglican Church about our Climate Change Action Plan. So it's actually a really good basis for me. Deputy Mayor Huntley was there, so you're gonna have to suffer through this again. But it just kind of keeps me on track as to kind of give you it's a good basis to understand the policy framework that we've put in place with regards to climate change action initiatives. So, so I'll give you just a little bit of history. There were kind of, oh, sorry, I just did click my mouse, not. So the Climate Change Action Plan kind of started in 2012 with the Sustainable Peterborough Plan. So what the Sustainable Peterborough Plan was, it was established for the entire Greater Peterborough area, which we are part of. And it was a vision for the region over a 25-year time frame. So it set goals, strategic directions, priority actions to foster healthy environment, people, and economy. And as I mentioned, it's the entire Peterborough area. So it encompasses, we're one township out of 8 townships, 2 First Nations, the county of Peterborough itself, and the city of Peterborough. It's a pretty broad-based plan. I'm not sure if anyone has had the opportunity to review it. I think it's about 400 pages. So if you're looking for something to read, to put yourself, not to put yourself to sleep, but you know, it is a very comprehensive plan. But it does have goals and strategic directions and priority actions that are in 12 focus areas, one of which is climate change. And the priority action under climate change was to become an active member in the Partners for Climate Change Protection Program, which is through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. It was designed to establish a baseline of greenhouse gas emissions, and then develop a plan to set target in emission reductions. So this all happened back in Sustainable Peterborough was done in 2012. We joined the Federation for Canadian Municipalities for Climate Change Protection Program, that's a mouthful, in 2015. And in 2016, we developed as a collective a climate change action plan for the region, as well as individual climate change action plans for all of the townships and First Nations. Just give me a minute here. So the climate change action program, so when we became a Partner for Climate Change Protection program, it's a program that over 250 municipalities across Canada joined. And it gives you basically planning tools to help you reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. And it follows like a milestone. So a lot of this is how we got there is in the climate change action plan. I would encourage you to read the Peterborough one first, because then the local ones filter down out of it. So it has basically a 5 milestone process. You create an inventory, you set a reduction for target for reduction, you develop a local action plan, you implement it, and you monitor the results. Okay. Okay. I'm just gonna skip through a couple of things here. So the overall plan for both the greater Peterborough area, the kind of the umbrella plan, as well as the individual township plans, have 2 focuses, and one is corporate and the other is community. So the corporate sector is kind of the internal operations of the municipality, right? So all of our buildings, all of our fleets, all of our anything that would be contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. The community sector, its considerations on how communities are designed, how people interact and influence their surroundings. So it is all of you. It's all of us, really, where we live, where we work, what we do, what we eat, all of that is part of the community focus. Sorry, guys. Not going to really bore you with all of the details about what our milestones were and what our emission targets were. That's all in the plan. We set a target reduction as 31%. I think it was for 2031, but don't quote me on that.
It was 2031.
It was 20. Oh, thank you. Okay, so it was 31% reduction by 2031 for our community, and 29% reduction over our emissions for us as a corporation. Just over 3% of our emissions as a community come from the corporate sector. So this is kind of one of the reasons we were pushing. Councillor Huntley was a very, very strong advocate for this committee, because we really need to get out into the community, because that's where the largest part of our emissions are taking place. And this is where we need to focus initiatives, efforts, that, and hopefully we're hoping this committee will help drive that. Okay, sorry guys. So if you kind of flip through the plan, it has themes that are kind of across the entire greater Peterborough area. And it's our homes, our workplaces, our schools, transportation, food, land, our people. And it sets strategies for what we're going to do for all of those theme areas. To give you a little bit of an idea of what we've done, I'm just gonna, for example, just give me a sec here.
Are you driving the display?
She's like sitting there going, oh my God, she's winging it, and she shouldn't do that. Okay, so part of our goals for home, work and school, we're, building more efficient homes, making sure existing homes become more energy and water efficient, reduce waste by residents, facilitate climate change friendly operations, support the green economy. There's some pretty broad based initiatives. From a transportation standpoint, build an active transportation network, seek alternatives to single occupant vehicles, or public transportation, and transition to cleaner vehicle operations. If you go through the plan, you'll notice that it's set up such that we are a two-tier municipality, so we are the lower tier. So there are a lot of initiatives that are set at the upper tier. So they are something that the upper tier would be responsible for. So for example, there's roads within the county, within the township that are owned by the county. So they're responsible for maintaining, upgrading. So there's some stuff that falls outside of our control, and we recognize that in the plan. And we try to identify where us as a township would take a leading role and where us as a township would take a supporting role. So as you read through that plan, you'll see, and that's why it's good to read the two together, because it'll kind of show you where we are taking on a supportive role, because we just don't have the authority and in some cases the capacity to take on certain initiatives. Some of the things that we have done, in terms of our homes, I had mentioned earlier that a number of strategies, the key thing is we're really trying to make sure homes are energy efficient and that we're reducing waste. Homes and businesses are our biggest greenhouse gas emitter, which you will see that in the plan. I think it's like 30% of our greenhouse emissions.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a question just on that point?
Of course.
Do you know what the emissions are for agriculture within the municipality? Just as it being like a large farming community, I just was wondering how those emissions compared to what we're saying residential and business emissions look like.
So I have like our emissions by sector, Leslie. So transportation makes up of our total emissions.
Sorry, which page is that? Yeah.
No, this is just a speaking notes yeah, that I have. Yeah, sorry, Lauren. So this is actually all in the plan. There is a chart that that I'm reading this from.
I'm sorry, I didn't read that far then. If it wasn't there, I didn't.
If I can find it for you.
That chart.
Might be in the Peterborough plan, Leslie.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at chapter 4 for us, but I'll scroll up.
Page 59 in your package, Leslie. So
Okay, I
essentially,
see.
to answer your question directly, agriculture makes up about 13.5% of our emissions. The biggest ones are transportation and residential, so our homes and our cars and vehicles. Commercial is kind of about the same as agriculture. It's about 13.9. Industrial is about 6.7. And then is
least it's kind of surprising.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah. So just getting back to some of the things that we have done to try and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, particularly within the community. Just in the last year, council directed staff to, we had a community improvement plan, which is an incentive plan for commercial businesses and institutions that they can access for enhancements, a number of different programs. It was very successful, and council directed staff to, it was only available to Millbrook. So council said, we want to make this available to the rest of the community, and we want to add some more programs to it. And one of those was the sustainability grant. So the sustainability grant, it's an incentive program. It's designed to encourage investment in renewable energy sources, active transportation infrastructure, energy efficient improvements, electric vehicle charging stations, green spaces. So it would be designed for a business or a developer that you could work with them to encourage them to build energy efficient homes. So that was one thing we saw as a way of trying to address our residential greenhouse gas emissions. We also did the pilot project for the Millbrook Organic Waste Program, and that seems to be going very well. Working, yeah, of course.
When you were talking about the hierarchy and the powers we have as a community and the powers we don't have, but occasionally you've been sort of slipping in, not necessarily coming out and saying new development, but things like that. But if we can't, can we put a plan or a suggestion together and present it to the, you know,
To the developer?
Yeah, because with the development going on, I mean, we can all, you know, go to our homes and our streets and our neighbors and our communities, our churches, and we can do our best.
Yeah.
Right. However, if there's development all around us and they're not abiding by the rules that are in place, and the level of government above us isn't sharing what they should be doing, then our efforts are, they're not going anywhere. So I'm just like, I'm just wondering, like, do we have that weight? Or do you have that weight?
It's an interesting conversation. I think Bridget and I had this at the last sustainability meeting is, you know, we seem to direct a lot of this stuff around, you know,
Little people.
like
You can call it little people.
fixing and recovery, right, rather than be proactive.
Ah.
First,
Right.
right? And I think,
Mhm.
you know, we at the sustainability Peterborough level, you know, there's a lot of government incentives that are out there for developers.
Right.
And I think a big point we're trying to make was making, how do we get more awareness of those programs?
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest problem we have is everybody wants to do something, but no one knows how to do it.
Yeah.
So how do we get more and more awareness of these programs out there? So I think your point being, and I know Kyle's have heard me on this one many, many times, is, you know, the building code is only set at a certain level.
Exactly.
And that's all they have to build. And that's all we
Minimum.
can force them to build.
Right.
You know, and the suggestion is, how do we incent them to build better?
Right. Without overstepping our
Without overstepping.
position.
Absolutely. And that's,
You know.
that is the
Mhm.
delicate balance. And that's why we have this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Your point about sitting down with the developers and, yeah, I mean, there's no harm in asking the question and saying this is, you know, we want this as a community. There are incentives in building to a green standard. There's a huge return on investment, educating them as to what that return on investment is. I think that hopefully is an initiative coming out of this committee. Because there's no reason why we can't sit down with them and ask the question.
Well, it's
right?
just that with the new community that was just built, like Millbrook or Highlands or whatever you want to call it. Although there might not be data because there wasn't staff or anything, but just that alone with, you know, trucks, gas, oil, whatever, those
Yeah.
lines, there must be some data that can actually be used to say, hey, now you're building whatever, you're building here and there and everywhere. Well, we can already prove to you that you've already damaged stuff. Okay, that's
Tough
our
word to
street.
use.
But no, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, if we're going to, if you have to put all these numbers together for 2 years past, those developments weren't even in place,
And so I don't know, I explained that. So that's for our own facilities,
Yeah.
that reporting.
right?
The actual, like any of the growth, like
Community
residential and
stuff,
that, that's not part of that plan. It's just for our own. So that'd be like, with this plan, that'd be the corporate side is what we report on, not the other side.
I'm saying if we can prove that there was some things done or could have been done differently, then we have a neighborhood that was just built. We can already prove what damage or what strains it caused on our systems. So going forward, that would be like one of the first arguments. And then as another development's done, you know what I mean? Then you're adding strength to your arguments.
So are you talking about environmental damage or are you talking about increases to?
Anything that will help
Emissions
keep
or-
everybody, obviously, we can all do our part on like an individual level. However, if we can get the corporate, like you're saying, that they only have to go to code. So whatever is out there, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, if we have new developments that are already from start to finish, we know, well, eventually we'll know what the impact was,
Mhm.
so.
But it's, I think you're almost talking two different things, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking about the building, you're talking about where a building can be built and what it can do. And you can measure what a code building is versus, you have the incentives on top of it, and then you have the green roofs and gray water and all sorts of stuff. You can measure that difference. I think the other part of what you're talking about, though, is what is the impact of the actual construction itself?
Yes, that one I'm more concerned
Right,
about.
which is,
Yeah, that's a bigger iceberg, but I believe the initial problem or the problem facing us right now is we still need to establish a floor. We're nowhere near a middle or a ceiling. We still haven't even established
there's
where
no
we were
baseline.
2 years ago. So we need a baseline.
Mhm.
You can't judge anything unless you have a starting point. If we're all starting at different points, it then becomes futile to decide, well, I started back here and someone else started here. We're never going to meet anywhere near the same point to at least have something to address. So
I
this
think
issue here about getting to July 1st would be first and foremost, probably the most this is where I think all the efforts need to go, is to at least say, okay, here's where we are, right or not, whether it's measured or checked on by anyone else, at least we have a basis from which to start with. They can then come back and say, oh, we'd like you to take this in or reduce that, factor slightly so that it's more in line with this, and here's how we measured that, that's fine. But at least we have something to go on.
Yeah, we do have a baseline in our climate change action plan, but it is old. Was based on 2011
11, yeah.
data, yeah. So that does need to be updated, but keep in mind, some of that update can be informed by the reporting that Kyle is doing for the energy demand management that he has to do every year.
Yeah, that
So it
part's-
won't be as outdated. It'll
Well,
be-
Yeah.
that part is our facilities.
That's just our facility.
But that'll
Yeah.
at least give us somewhere to start and
Start.
branch out from there. I believe Leslie probably has a brighter flashlight than the rest of us on certain issues, so.
Oh,
we'll
no.
continue to-
Just have more time to read.
Oh, well, that's fine, but without putting personal feelings aside
I
completely,
thought it was fun.
yes, there are some issues that some people may feel are baseline and others may feel are adequate. So it's going to be hard to judge that, but most important thing is how does it impact in the direction we're supposed to be going? If it's been set to go in this direction and to reduce by 31, and this is how many trees we're going to put out per, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, at least we have something to say, we lean more left or we lean more right.
Right.
To get to something.
Yeah.
Once we get to something, or at least have a path deviating slightly and say, hey, what might help a little bit here would be to say we could do this, or maybe there'd be a little more community effort. Or one of the biggest things probably is, as it is right here, becoming very obvious to all of us, is that a lot of this is known, but it's not known by a lot of us.
Yeah.
It's known by very few. And once again, the few have the keys and the many are walking around blind trying to figure out what it is we can do. So the more we can put out there, information is always powerful, but I'm sure the community would be leaning more towards moving in the right direction than they would be moving in the wrong. They just need to know which way to go. So,
Right. Absolutely.
you know, the thing about making people aware would be great, but
Yeah.
sorry about that little.
No, that's okay. I apologize if I interject at the incorrect time. I think there's a slight delay, and so I'm not intending to talk over you. But I agree, and I think there's a couple of things from me reading the plans and then listening to the conversations. I think again we're coming up to really understanding like our data management. Is there an opportunity to get residents engaged in some sort of pilot program to report their energy usage? That's like always an option. And I also think, this is really great timing in terms of the township wanting to create this committee, engage the residents, because, and I think I'm going to ask the chair too, if we can add this for an agenda item to the next meeting, but the United Nations just released their climate change report yesterday. It was done by the, what's the acronym? Sorry, bear with me. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So it was done by 195 governments, and it's very comprehensive. And it's getting a lot of attention in the news. So it's really a good time to kind of piggyback on that momentum as well to see, what can we leverage from that to enhance both our energy management plan and the climate change action plan. And again, I think that all really comes down to, setting our goals for the committee, and then understanding how we can really provide the data to back things up and to really get a good understanding of where we are. And then that awareness piece, I think that's going to be really critical. Just looking at where the emissions are coming from, there's only so much that can be done by the township. And to your point, there's a lot on the residential side. So, I think it'll be a good timing to kind of put our hats on and think about how we can engage the community to feed into these plans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you can bear with me just for a few more minutes, I can just kind of finish going through some of the stuff that we have done. There is, we do have a partnership with Peterborough Marina for them to come out and do energy audits for homeowners. I don't think that has been, I know that was a conversation piece that is a township climate change committee that I'm part of. And I don't think that has been well publicized. So it is something that needs to be looking to make people aware of and that would probably inform or help encourage people to do energy reporting, Leslie, like you were mentioning.
Yeah.
We also included zoning requirements for bike parking. So we're trying to do our part in whatever way we can. I will tell you that the county has, they have a transportation master plan, and they actually have a separate active transportation master plan. And a lot of it includes policies centered around paving the shoulders. So encouraging people to ride their bikes. Our community is hard for transportation because we live in a rural community. So my friends growing up, I don't know about you guys, but my friends growing up, they lived right next door to each other because they grew up in town. I grew up in, on a farm or just in a farming community. My closest neighbor was a mile away. So it's not as easy. We had to travel just to buy our groceries. We had to travel 12 kilometers. Well, we're not going to do that by bike. We're going to do that by car, right? So it is challenging for us. It is challenging for us to put in bus lines because we are a small municipality, but that doesn't mean that we can't try and figure out a way to reduce our reliance on cars. But that does tend to be a little bit of a challenge for us. Just in terms of our, our food, our land, our people, we have started, we have a community garden. There is the Millbrook Farmers Market. We are working on a tree replacement policy. Do we have one, or is it just still under the works? Yeah, yeah. As part of our planning policies, we do try and create complete communities. And complete communities allow for walkable communities. So the development here in Millbrook is Millbrook is a serviced area. It is an urban area. It's close to downtown, so people don't have to get in their cars to go and buy groceries. They can walk. So that's part of our policies in our official plan, and that's something else we've done to try and reduce our environmental footprint. So I think that's it, just to kind of give you a little bit of a synopsis of, it was kind of long-winded, but it's a comprehensive plan, and I think it's important to understand where it came from, because it will inform a lot of what we do in this committee.
I just, I've made a bunch of notes and doing a lot of thinking in this. Some of this isn't a big shock, seeing that we're almost 30% of our emissions are coming from transportation. We're in a commuter. I don't see the 1 mile drop off to a friend's house as being the reason why we have high emissions in transportation. It's because people are commuting. People are either going to Peterborough or they're going to the GTA for work. So that's the reality that we're in. So we have a nice little carpool parking lot out there that I see, and it's probably 40 or less % full whenever I've been there. So, there's bigger fish to fry. I guess one of my concerns, and we're looking at 2011 data, so it's 12-year-old data that we're looking at. Obviously, this needs to be refreshed. But I'm actually, one of the things I think is a little bit flawed in the way the metrics are taken here is that we're including industry, agriculture, commercial, all in that community piece, which is part of community. But I guess there's a lot of pressure or a lot of burden on households to do better, and I see that. I would challenge some of this data in that I don't believe that it's households. If home efficiencies, if we're talking about 100-year-old homes in this area, sure. But I don't think that the burden of emissions is coming from households when you start to factor in how much industry does produce. So I'm kind of curious to know, in our municipality, what are the main industries that exist within our boundaries? So what are the form of industries? What is the percentage of our our economy in this municipality that is based on agriculture? I think that you have to see it within the context that it exists as well. So our population is small compared to the size of the municipality. So you kind of have to look at these things within that context.
Yeah, and I think to answer your question, when the consultant that took us through the process of defining what our emissions were for the climate, to establish the climate change action plan, they had a formula at that time.
This is 2011.
This is 2011.
Yes.
Okay.
So those formulas, I'm going to be honest with you, have changed probably 150 times, and there's multiple people that will tell you different ways to calculate. So, and you're absolutely right. It's not perfect, but it's what we have. Can we improve on it? Absolutely. But I will tell you that that's how the data was developed, right? So, and as a region, we are an agricultural region.
Sure.
So agriculture does play an important part, but we are growing too. And so the numbers are suggesting that it's coming from transportation and from residential development. Transportation, because we are all, I think, commuter, if you live in Otonabee, South Monaghan, if you live in Selwyn, if you live in Havelock, Belmont, you are probably traveling to your job, or you're, traveling to get, everyday stuff. So, yeah, that's basically how the data was arrived at.
And so one last question is, and again, I'm super sensitive to I believe in community engagement, absolutely, but I am sensitive to the fact that the more pressure you put on individual households, the more frustrating it will be for the community. Whereas, if we call on people who are naturally measuring consumption, like gas providers, and electricity providers. Like they can measure, like they can provide reports on consumption within a boundary. So like if we tap into those, that data, as
Mhm.
opposed to like trying to survey households or things like that. But I just think that, and it's not a criticism at all, just another idea, or like, what are our goals? I guess we're jumping into this a little bit, but I think, you know, as a committee, if our goal is to update this document, I think we need to look at what we need in
Mhm.
order to arrive at that.
Yeah, I will say, if I remember correctly, it was very difficult to get that data from utilities.
They don't give it out. They
Yeah.
don't collect it.
Yeah. So I
It's-
know that
it's not
was
available.
a really, really challenging thing for us. So, yeah, they
That's
wouldn't give it out.
That's
No.
a
And that's
policy.
why self-reporting is really kind of the only avenue that governments have.
I think we could be mindful of the message. We're not necessarily telling people that they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
We're telling them how they could maybe save themselves some money in the long run. How
There
they
has to
could,
be a benefit.
people are generally, I believe, want to reduce their footprint. So if we guide them and say, you know, here's a way you can reduce your footprint. You know, I think people will choose that. I don't think we want to say to them, you know, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong.
Mhm.
Here's a way that might be better for you and you might save money and you'll reduce your footprint. I think that's maybe the spin we put on the communication.
The positivity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think that the reality is residential emissions are so high simply because natural gas is the primary heating source. So, you know, there's not a lot of alternative options right now that are cost effective. But, you know, ultimately, I think in our near future, we're going to be assessing, you know, different opportunities for home heating that are not like carbon emitters.
Right.
You know, and I think that's something we have to keep in our mind.
For sure.
That metal could be worth something. Just, and sometimes the simplest view is the simplest view, and it sheds the most light on everything. Let's face the fact that there's no way that we truly get a clear or even remotely close idea of what emissions are. So let's just call it X. Whatever X is, it's the unknown variable. Whatever anyone has established it to be, whether we believe it to be high or whether we believe it to be low, we'll just start with one. But that one is the genesis for everything else. That one is determining what your bill is for this, what your bill is for that, what it costs you for gas and so on. So the only measurable ones we have are the ones that hit people in the pocketbook or the end user. Those are the only things anyone else sees. It's great to look at the world and think, oh, this would be a wonderful thing, but there has to be a positive something in return for the action. People are wonderful things, but we do our best when things are at their worst. Or if there's an impact because you really need it. If all of a sudden you don't have anything left at the end of the month when everything's come in and everything's gone out, having an extra $200 left over, well, now might be worth doing something. And the time right now might not be bad for doing something like that. But I truly believe that is the secret, is to say not so much what we can do, or is it more on this side of the ledger or that side of the ledger? It's just X. We can't change it. We're not even going to change how people determine what X is.
Mhm.
We just have to face it.
Sure.
It is the established fit X. So from X, we have to determine a way to say, okay, whatever we do going forward, or at least have a voice that echoes what the majority of the people would like to see or do, is to say, if we can curb, even bring something to the table that may not be there, for instance, walkability, then why does every neighborhood not have, or have one side of the street that doesn't have a sidewalk? You know, maybe sidewalks should be something that have to be in place. Make it easier for people to walk, make it easier for kids to ride their bikes. If that's a, you know, it's a minute little thing, but little things that might be suggestive. And it's the old thing, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. Start with one little thing, then the next suggestion comes forward, and eventually there might be something. At the end of the day, we're not going to measure success based on the fact we got to this. The end of the day is we had impact, and that will make or have, it'll be the feed to get you to go to the next step. So we're not going to even get to it, as Leslie said. They're never going to tell us this stuff. And if they do, it's going to be tainted. It's going to be partial. We will never know. We're just going to be spinning our wheels. So just accept what X is. And what can we do to go forward and try and change that slightly in any direction possible, but hopefully positive.
Mandy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So this is, has there ever been any consideration given in recent years to creating a position to support these activities? Or like a hybrid position within the municipal, like within the township, to actually, manage your energy plan and manage, some of these activities that we're talking about? Because while these are all great ideas, I'm wondering, just based on the conversation we were having at the beginning of the meeting, how effective we will be in implementing some of these things, just from a staffing perspective.
Do you want me to jump in, or did you have?
No, I was going to
Go
say,
team.
well, I know you have another thing you might bring up. I don't know, it's a trickier question than it.
It's okay. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just, as we're talking and I'm looking
No,
at.
it's fine. It's the changes from the province and what's required is just constantly evolving, and it evolves more and more as we go, like just the changes with Bill 23 and everything. So we're always looking at staffing and what we need to do, and we already wear multiple hats, so it's having a whole position just dedicated to that has never been really feasible. This is our first step of bringing more people on board to get these things moving.
So it does kind of feed into item 9.3, which is the codes acceleration fund. So I don't know if Cindy needs a motion from 9.2 to just accept the climate change action plan, or receive. Thank you.
Information, that's absolutely right. We do, but is there any more questions on that before we go off that? A lot of great discussion. I think we realize we have to figure out a base, and we need to figure out some initiatives and community buy-in and engagement, and a lot of great discussion around that.
I just have one more question. I'm so sorry.
No, don't.
Go ahead.
No, I just keep cutting people off, and I'm not intending to do that, so I apologize. Just to be clear on the expectations of this group, so feed into updating the energy management plan. Is the expectation that the township create their own climate change action plan that is then solely owned by the township, or is it to work with the county of Peterborough to still stay under that umbrella within their climate change action plan?
That's your question.
Well, I think the way it's structured, we have to stay underneath it, but we have autonomy on our own to try to mirror, because obviously you don't want to reinvent everything. But we can also pick support us, focus on that.
Yes.
Right. I think, I don't know if that's where we're gonna go, but I was gonna bring that up for sure is, like, it's a big elephant here to chew on. And we're gonna get nowhere if we keep staring at the elephant, right? Like, we gotta pick priorities in this thing and figure out what it is we want to start tackling, one at a time.
Yeah. So, and I think, the evidence that was presented as part of the data to create the plan suggests that we need to focus our energy on transportation and residential. That will, I guess, represent the biggest part of the elephant for us. And so maybe that's where we kind of zero in on initiatives that we can push forward to take a bite out of those emissions level. The Codes Acceleration Fund is a fund that Kyle and I have been looking at. It's actually a federal program.
So did you just move on?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Do you need a motion?
Yes. Sorry. This is why Deputy Morant is fantastic on these committees, because if we procedurally get astray, you bring us back.
Yes.
So Manny, you need to move on
Motion,
to receive item 9.2 for information, which is your your Kevin Monaghan climate change action plan.
All right, in that case, we are looking for someone to present the motion to accept that on 9.1 or 9.11 as well?
Just receive.
Just proceed.
For 9.2,
All right.
yes.
9.2.
Yeah, we already did
9.2.
9.1, we're good.
Aye.
There we go. We have an aye. Do we have a seconder? We do.
So recorded vote. Kath, Deputy Mayor Huntley,
Yeah.
Joanne Key,
Yes.
Manny,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
and Leslie.
Yes.
Fantastic.
All right, Rich. go.
Okay, good. So the Coast
This is
Acceleration Fund is, it's a program that we found through Natural Resources Canada. In a nutshell, what I'm still kind of understanding the program. It is pretty comprehensive and the application itself is 26 pages. So, but from what I understand of it, and the reason we're kind of interested in it is the federal government has, and you might have to help me out with this, but the federal government has a building code standard. And they have within it levels. So you can build to just base standard, or you can build to a higher standard. We also have the Ontario Building Code, which I think also has levels as well.
So there's a national building code that some provinces sign on to, and that, but Ontario has their own. Same kind of deal. Where that's going, we might end up becoming part of the whole national code because they kind of mirror themselves, but Ontario code is just unique to Ontario, like as if we're doing our own plan, it's more what Ontario wants. But we may merge with the national. So there's two, currently in the Ontario building code, there's two ways that energy is dealt with. There's prescriptive or there's performance. So you have two options. One, prescriptive, is you just go by the wording of the code. Instead of boring you here, it's a quick calculation of how much wall area you have compared to how much window area you have. That will tell you which area of the energy part, which charts you can pick from to dictate what your R values are, your U values of your windows, what your mechanical energy efficiencies are. And it's basically you pick a package that has trade-offs. You pick one and then you have to match all those. So you might have above grade walls that are R24 in one package, and another package might have above grade walls that are R20, but then you might have to have higher value windows in this package or higher furnace efficiency in this package. So that's called prescriptive. So it's basically a walkthrough to pick what you want to do. The other path is performance modeling. So you have typically most energy auditors are also certified to do energy modeling. So they'll do a model for you. So you'll pick what you want in your house. They'll model it and have an actual number that comes out at the end that has to be verified once you've built. Most people don't go down that route because there's an unknown there. You could model it, build the thing, and then it doesn't come out with the usually you do a blower door test, and you might have leakage and all kinds of stuff, and then where does it lead you? So pretty much, I would say in the past 5 years, I've had one person go down that route. All the others have gone down the prescriptive. So those are the two tiers, just so you know, that you can follow.
So the intent behind the Code Acceleration Fund is to put in place mechanisms or policies, if you will, to encourage people to go to the greener standard or the higher standard. It would fully fund a position that would help us do that. So it would help us put standards in place. I think like the city of Toronto, I think Markham, I think Guelph has standards for green building that they put in place, and I think they do it through the zoning bylaw is what we kind of think
We're
in
still
terms of
researching how they're doing it.
yeah, in terms of enforcement, because as Kyle alluded to, we only have the building code and we can only enforce what the building code says. But these higher standards, I think you can enforce through the zoning bylaw and through your official plan policies. So we would be looking at the very least, this person would come in and perhaps be an education resource that if developers or home builders coming in, looking for a permit, looking to do a site plan for a subdivision, they can sit with them and actually access modeling software that would help them understand better processes that would actually lead to greater savings down the road.
Is this a full-time resource or a workshop type thing?
No, it's a full-time position is what we're looking at.
And is there enough development? in the
All
municipality
questions
to-
we don't know yet.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, you know, I'm gonna guess that with this kind of a federal funding opportunity, every city that doesn't have this is gonna, or like every
Jump all over.
municipality.
Yeah,
is
it'd be
gonna
very
jump on this. So,
competitive, yeah,
So
it
this
is.
is federal, so are they dividing portions of it proportionally for provinces or?
No, so you can go with a stream that has if you have the authority to create your own standard. And the other stream is if you don't have the authority to create your own standard. So in Ontario, I don't think anybody has the authority to create their own standard, but according to like the city of Toronto has created one, the Markham has created one. So whether they just have the standard and they enforce it through their CIP, or whether they try and enforce it through site plan control. These are things that Kyle and I are trying to ascertain.
But wouldn't, like, if I was a developer and you've given me a higher standard than I wanted to build to, I mean, I just go straight to Halifax and say, you know, you're pushing beyond, like, that's gonna overrule your bylaws.
So that's why we're
Yeah.
Yeah,
seeing
that's
what
what we're trying to
mechanism
figure
they're
out.
using,
Yeah.
because
It's carrot and stick, right? Like, you gotta
Mhm.
use a carrot versus a stick and stuff.
we remember with our lead thing, with the official plan, like we tried to get people to build to lead, but can you really do that? Well, that's what we're trying to figure out.
And so the thing could be like our community improvement plan for facade improvements, they have to be in compliance with the streetscape design guidelines.
Right, if they
Those are
want- if they want
guidelines.
money.
If they want money,
Mhm, right, so it's
right?
carrot.
So if you have an incentive program that you want to turn on and there are guidelines that in order for them to be eligible for that incentive,
Mhm.
I think that's what we think is it's carrot, it's not a stick. But I think, sorry, just one more thing. I think though, all municipalities are going to be, all provinces are going to be required to go to zero net, right? At some point in the very near future. So if we have something that we're ready to pull the trigger on right away, then it'll make it easier for us.
Don't get me wrong, so
No, I just have more questions.
if we can get to that point ahead of the curve, you know, so when it does become enforceable, we're there. you know,
That's
Yeah.
what we're saying.
then-
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, we should be giving those incentives.
Well, zoning is always that's the one sort of controllable switch that a municipality would have.
but like
To-
Ryan
yeah,
said, yeah,
to a
to a
point.
point, yeah.
But
Yeah. That's
we-
what we're trying to
yeah,
understand.
we,
yeah.
we've run into things like that of nature in terms of even in what is zoned as residential. But if you convert to a multi-level or an income property, or all of a sudden the rules change and there's incentive to, of course, municipality because your tax rate changes completely, but there are wonderful outcomes that come the other way. The safety is much better. And actually, the safety is things that you would probably want to have in a single family residence, but
Yeah.
it can change things a lot. But the zoning one is, I suppose there might be a little bit of a sort of an area there because Toronto has done some crazy things, but of course the trains left the station so long ago, I don't even think they could go back on some of the things they've done. You know, there's an extra tax for selling and an extra tax for this and a tax for that. I mean, they've even considered out-of-towners paying extra to use the roadway.
Yeah, there's a few
So-
municipalities that do have a
Yeah.
green municipal standard for building. It's just what we're trying to understand is how, or if
How
they
can
are
we-
enforcing it, or if it's just they're encouraging people to go.
Can you
for that.
talk to someone at the city of Markham? Like, do you guys have a
Yeah,
relationship?
yeah, absolutely, Leslie, and it is on my list of things to
Yeah.
do to try and get that understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, I could potentially help with that. I just like Markham's always been really ahead of the curve with regards to like energy conservation. And that maybe would be a really good place to start to get an understanding to your
Yeah.
point,
Just to manage the
manage
expectations.
that.
Sorry, just to manage the expectations of the committee. The application is due next Thursday, and it is like a 26-page application. but
So
this
something
is to
slightly
manage your
jumped ahead of your
expectations,
July
but
1st
hopefully there-
deadline.
Yeah, hopefully there's another iteration.
Couple of quick questions. Is this funding only, can private or industry apply for this funding?
My
Or is-
understanding it's only available to municipalities and to First Nations.
Okay, perfect. And would it make more sense to leverage our application by collaborating with the county or the city of, like, just if it's for a position
Mhm.
and we're a tiny little community, would it make more sense to leverage and say like, hey, is Peterborough putting in a bid for this? Can we work together? Can we encompass
Share
everyone and have?
Yeah,
a person-
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
suggestion.
Great.
absolutely.
Okay, that's it. I'm done.
Or just like, maybe it's not me filling it.
Yeah, I can delegate.
Other than trying to
Yeah.
get them on board in time.
Yeah, that's the only thing. If they haven't considered it, then it'd be trying to get them on board in another couple of days, right? Which,
If we have the time, good idea, though, yeah.
yeah, for sure. But there may be another application intake. So a lot of
Yeah, no,
times they
it
have more than one.
happens. Yeah, it's March. If they have money to give out, they've got a timeline. It's for this budget year.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
So the other thing I'd be worried about, and I am worried about, is if we apply for it and we get it, and they give you the funding for 1 year.
yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Well-
You know, big chunk of money and you got this much time to spend it and go.
Now,
And then you don't use it.
now we're
properly.
gonna with that person the next year, and that's part of our budget, right?
Well, or you.
Or you just do a
contract
one-year
position,
contract, right? Yeah.
I'm with Habitat in Guelph, actually,
Oh.
we're home there,
Oh,
so
good.
I could ask.
Yeah, because I think they have a standard too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we follow the city standard. And we have our own,
Yeah,
To
but
be
do they,
full.
but does the city of Guelph, I think they have a green standard.
blue, I think they call it.
Blue?
Yeah,
Is it
something
blue?
like
Yeah,
blue
yeah.
weed or something like that, I can ask, who the person is, if I wanna chat.
They're probably watching.
Probably, yeah.
I don't know.
So I think regarding the motion, does the committee support staff submitting the application? Do we feel comfortable with that? What's the next step? I think that's what we need to determine where we go from here.
I think-
I almost defer to you two, like, you know best, like, do we have the volume to warrant it? Like, it sounds like a great idea, but
If it doesn't, if it has a cap or a timeline, by the time it gets put out there, are we gonna literally be passing the timeframe to take advantage of it? Are we going to get interest and the interest will simply be, oh, sorry, we're closed?
well,
And
my
we
concern,
have-
sorry, Manny, my
Go
concern
ahead.
on this one would be, 99.9% of the houses being built are by one person. Right, if they don't take advantage of this, then it was.
Then we're,
But they
Yeah, it's
they can't apply for it if
It's
they're a
just
private sector.
municipalities, yeah.
It's for a public sector.
Right, but if we try
Well,
to get
that's
this
the way
in
to
place
do
by the time guy
yeah,
builds his houses, like, we're not gonna have
we're
another.
gonna miss it.
Yeah,
But
there's
the
another-
point of the
another
position
line.
is just to encourage for future build.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
I
the
think it's
impact
to
of
create
this
that
person
standard,
is
right?
gonna impact future build,
Yeah,
2024 probably. It's not gonna touch, it's not gonna change anything
No.
for this year.
this
anyway.
person would create that standard that you would use going forward for future buildings.
Yeah, we thought, how would we keep them busy enough? Well, like we get, other than our little subdivisions and our big
Our
subdivisions.
little folks.
Our little 12-home ones. We do get a big 25 custom houses and all kinds of renovations and stuff. So this person could also, people could come in and they could be the person to go, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? We can't make you do it, but it's just an educational piece to work with, because we constantly get people who come in who it's their first time either building a house or renovating, and they are asking questions, and we can't force anybody to do things, but when they're asking, okay, well, what will it do if I use rigid insulation on the outside as opposed to this and that? That person could also work with people coming in it'd be peanuts in the grand scheme of things, 20 houses, but it'd be an
But if that
educational
person-
piece.
Sorry,
Yeah.
but if that person works with builders,
Mhm.
and then it filters down, right? Like,
Mhm.
one person builds
Just
one
trickle
house,
at
it's
some
done,
point.
right? But one person's building multiple houses, it's
Yeah.
something they can offer to the house they built, which to me, that makes perfect. sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you guys have time for a 26-page application.
Bridge does. Just nights free.
So, yeah, for sure.
Weekends.
Yeah, sure. I will check to see, because there may be another iteration too, that, like, if we can't make this one, we could probably make the next one, but.
Submit in time for the one that's yet to come.
We can always give it back.
I mean, from the other side of the fence, of course, there's always that cute little acronym MPAC that somehow comes into there every time, because it sounds like a wonderful idea. But the moment someone goes down the road, the cost is more severe than the, I think it's one thing to do good, and I believe in doing good, but at some point, if at least you break even on the doing good, it's a lot easier to swallow, but the moment you start to change things like that, and it has an impact, it seems like the right thing at the first of it, but when someone comes in and says, well, I'm glad you did good, but now this is your new, your new tax situation, but I'd love to find out. I'd love to find out what they do. Yeah, right.
As a committee, given the question, should we submit the application?
Should we vote on it?
Is our position to get a bit more information, determine whether to proceed with this
I
application?
think
or whether
if
there's
staff
something
is
we
able, I
can
think maybe
consider?
if the motion is that if staff is able to put forward an application, then the committee supports us putting forward the application, and then we can report back at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah, and with, it depends on also the terms of reference for this application. Like if they say, if you submit a lousy application, are they gonna hand it back to you and say, make these improvements and resubmit? Or are they gonna say, yeah, you're
No.
off the list?
Yeah, if your application doesn't meet the requirements that they're looking for, it's the same as every funding program. They have key objectives that they're trying to achieve. When we did our Millbrook Community Improvement Plan, we had a focus for facade improvements for some of the buildings downtown and sidewalk patios. So that's why we turned on those programs. That was our focus, and we were really looking for projects that supported that.
Okay.
So it's the same.
Okay, I
do the
encounter
same
different
thing.
things because in another board that I'm on, we apply for federal funding and we get the opportunity to make adjustments. So
Oh, yeah.
it's just it's a totally different sector. though,
Yeah,
so no worries.
okay, yeah. So in my experience, we haven't, unless they don't have a lot of applicants and they're trying to get through, trying to be able to hand out the money, then they might be able to come back to you. But I suspect this one will be pretty competitive. They have said in the criteria, if you do not meet any of their criteria, they're
Oh.
just gonna,
And so how much is?
So is this the one that's due to be submitted on April 14th?
no, it's March 30th.
It says Indigenous applications will have until March 31st, but proposals will be open until April 14th.
The date I saw was March 30th, but if you're seeing April 14th,
Maybe
Yeah.
I'm really happy about that.
It just says codes acceleration fund, reduce greenhouse gas, blah, blah, blah. Calls for proposals will be open until April 14th.
Oh, so
we
perfect.
extended it already.
Maybe, yeah, maybe they extended
But
it.
double check in case I'm not looking at the right spot, but I was just reading about it.
Oh,
That sounds good.
awesome.
That sounds fantastic.
But that just kind of fine, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
more time for to come back. Yeah.
No, yeah, it just. gives
Well,
more
at
time.
least you can look at it, give you an opportunity to
And
look at it.
Explore how you want to proceed with the application, if you want to do it as Kevin Monaghan, or if you want to do it as Peterborough County.
So then the motion would then be,
Do you want me to read it?
yes.
That the Sustainability Advisory Committee receives the Codes Acceleration Fund for information and support staff in submitting an application for the funding, if possible, in collaboration with the county of Peterborough.
Well done.
Huh?
Just so quietly sitting there.
Just getting it, writing it all down.
And all with a
Good job.
pen.
You won't be able to read it, but scroll down, this is good. Does the committee support that?
Yeah,
Chair will
Yes.
affirm.
Leslie?
yeah, I think we should table that and floor it. And is anyone in favor? We have someone to table the motion?
I'll move it.
Then we'll move it. A seconder? We've got a seconder.
Perfect, so we'll call for recorded vote. Deputy Mayor Huntley,
Yes.
Joanne,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lisa, Manny,
Yes.
and Kat.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Well done, Leslie. Pulling that up and
Oh.
getting it in there.
I was just curious to see exactly what the objectives were. And it sounds like a really great program if it would be something that we'd be able to roll out.
Here's hoping.
So our next item would be to determine our next meeting date, as well as any other items that we think we might like to add to our upcoming agenda.
Can I speak? Am I supposed to ask if I can speak, like to ask the chair? I feel like I'm the,
Can't hear you.
No, we definitely can hear you. And the formal procedure is for either raise your hand and say through you, Chair, or I have a question. But like we spoke, it is kind of an informal, formal process.
okay,
So definitely, if you're trying to get in and we can't get you, put your hand up there, I'll definitely keep an eye on that as well.
okay,
But informally, it's just sort of through you, Chair, and kind of.
okay. So one thing that I would like to suggest as an agenda item for our next meeting is to have a time slot to discuss the United Nations most recent climate action plan. There's a lot of really good information in there. And I think the messaging is that our targets or what we've been working for right now are not going to cut it globally. And I think that it's really beneficial for two reasons. There's a component that I think we could leverage that's specifically for policymakers with regards to things that we can consider, how we can measure things. And then there's also components that are broken out very specifically with regards to house and home, like agriculture, water, food sustainability. There's just a lot of, I think, really critical information that the group should certainly be aware of.
Are you proposing, Leslie, that we all kind of go through it and digest it, or?
Yeah, I think
For us, maybe, like,
yeah, I think that going through it, like even the section for policymakers, I think it's about 30 pages would be just giving that a quick read. I think that would just help create an awareness and give us really background in terms of, what the industry standards should be. And then just to have it as a document to refer to feed into the other documents that we've talked about updating. I can't see everybody's faces, so I don't know how this is going over.
Leslie, that's an excellent, ambitious standard. I get that what's happening with the UN and sustainability goals, environmental, planetary goals are huge. I guess as a committee, are we ready to elevate our standards? I guess how much are we going to accomplish as a committee, and what are our goals? So we have a set of terms of reference, but like, what are the goals for this community? Does Cavan Monaghan want to aspire to, meet that 31%, 29% improvement objective over 2011? And who knows, if we're looking at 2011 data and we measure today, maybe we've already accomplished that. A lot has changed. Nobody was driving hybrids in 2011, I don't think, or not many. Maybe the next stage is that everyone's got a charger in their driveway, and that's something that we create through this committee. But I guess we're a committee of 5. I love what you're saying, and it's a great beacon for us to look to. But at the same time, as to be successful as a committee, we need to agree on what are we advocating for this community.
Yeah, for sure. I think I think the importance of it is just from an educational piece, just to get an understanding of, what's happening. And it just, I think, goes hand in hand with the documents that we were reviewing, like the why, the how. I think it would be helpful, not necessarily saying that we have to take it upon ourselves to implement the recommendations in this report. Like that's, really at like a federal level. But I think that for me anyways, it was really educational. And I think that is a piece that as a committee, you know, if we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about energy management, we're talking about reducing our emissions. I think that having the educational piece there is really important. I'm happy to email it to everybody offline. And then if we want to have an agenda item, I can talk to Manny offline and just see if there's any like pieces of information that we can leverage that just simply may be helpful to us moving forward when we are adapting our plans.
To you, Chad, I guess, Leslie, to my original question is there a way it can be dumbed down to like a couple slides to present to the, like that's kind of where I was going. Like,
Yeah.
are you willing to take
Sorry.
that, like as a little bit of an education to us? Because I can honestly tell you, like, I've read those reports and they go in one ear out the other. Like there are a lot of numbers and a lot of things. Like, how do we dumb it down to make it understandable? And I think that's part of, I think, you know, a bigger goal of our committee is yeah, how do we make this stuff digestible to people?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
We also had earlier brought up looking at Markham and Guelph as comparable communities for some ideas there.
Yeah.
And I guess if I can just add for items for the next meeting, just any updated metrics we can look at, any data that is newer than 2011, like even population and census data. What was our population back in 2011? And we set this goal of 31%, but we're a different community today.
Yeah,
So-
we changed by the.
8,600.
Yeah, we're
10,016. Is that it? Because I feel like COVID, like I felt like, oh my gosh, like half of Toronto moved to either Selwyn or
my calendar.
Cavan.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we moved from Selwyn to Cavan.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're almost done anyway.
I do recognize you now because you came into the inspection of our
I
shop.
was gonna say, I know you put me up.
Yeah. It took me a while, but you passed. Yeah.
That's all that matters.
But I think to your point, sorry, is how do we go about rebuilding that? Like, we're not gonna get anymore. But we need to refresh it. So what's our actual plan to refresh this? You know, the thing I'm talking about is also is what's our, you know, like, what do we want to tackle?
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of what
I can't tackle it all.
yeah, what do we want to, what is going to be our accomplishment as a committee in this next year? What do we want to see ourselves achieve and ideally celebrate that we've accomplished that?
I like your 1 year.
Yeah.
Well, term.
How long is this term?
4
Yay, I'm so excited.
But I like the 1 year. What do we want to do?
Okay.
in 1 year?
It's true, 1 year and then we'll see what we
No,
do.
I keep things off, you know, in bite-sized.
Again,
chunks.
I think we're in the parade, we're just not leading it. So we're following as much as we're trying to get them to shift a little. And as Leslie has stated, yeah, the goals, unfortunately, we do not live in bubbles. So even if we clean up or clear up or have some way made improvements as to where we are globally, which is where ultimately it all is, the impact is, you know, minute. So even if we've done something well here, what impact has it had somewhere else? So, and in order to offset that impact, it's the old teeter-totter, we have to somehow shift it and change it slightly. It is a moving target. So once again, I think it's always easy to start at the bottom and look up. So if we can establish at least what is X, and what is that? And I think the most important thing, first of all, is to find out how much closer are we to the July 1st submission would be probably the first point that we would really want to address to see where are we and how measurable is that to having that done and how accurate would we be? And regardless of how accurate we would be, once we hit July 1st, that is it. And I think we just look at everything going forward from that point. How and where do we go and where's 31% based on that X? Because it's the only X we can have. Go ahead, sir.
So just to clarify too, that July 1st was the energy demand
Yes,
management, so that's our facility.
That's
just
our facility.
municipally owned one, so pretty small piece of the pie, that 31%
is
is the.
residential.
Yeah.
But if we have one X, we
Yeah.
can somehow get to the next X. I mean,
But I'd say if you focus on how do we get that baseline? I mean, you're gonna lose, what are all the other things we can be doing in the meantime? So
Well,
it's kind of, it's, you
I
gotta
bel-
do it on a
yeah,
parallel.
but I believe the baseline deadline is gonna come up prior to when would our next meeting be?
That's the next.
That's
decision.
Yeah.
it's easy. Lynn.
Well, maybe that's
That-
the
do
thing.
we do
Maybe
that
when
one
we
first
decide
then?
on the next meeting date, sorry.
Yeah, go, no, go ahead.
The next meeting date is that, one of the things we were talking about is like, fixing the roads, say, for an example, on Fallis, like building them up so there could be a bike lane. So it may be something on the agenda should be, if anybody has any suggestion, that they've actually put a little bit of thought on how you might get to the end, then we're not spending time every time talking about something. Somebody will have brought us some information, just like you're saying, dissecting that report. So that, we can move along. Maybe everybody thinks that's a great idea. Okay, how much is it gonna cost to build up Fallis so there can be a bike lane? Okay, that's something somebody else can look into. Because our power is only so much and we want to do something. We want to prove, not prove, but we want to make sure that we've accomplished something instead of just talking about stuff. So
Would it
maybe-
make sense for us to bring our revised energy management plan? Because that is something that we do have to do. If we make a revision to it and we bring it to this committee to review and provide comment, and then we can take it back and
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
and then to see if we can work towards providing updated data so that we can have a fulsome conversation based around actual numbers. I'm not sure I can commit, depending on when you do decide to meet, I'm not sure I can commit to having that data for that particular meeting, but if you set a date and we can shoot for it.
What if we said November?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
but as you stated, we then get to the point where we now have something.
Yeah,
And it's nice to have something on the positive side of the ledger. It leads to,
so that will drive
Drive,
your conversation
going
going
forward.
forward, yeah.
and we have
So
something and we can at least
you can
compare
start with that.
one to the other and say, okay, on the resident, it's slightly different, but however, these points are all identical. So if we
Right.
use that as a basis, we can then start formatting a template for going forward on the other one, at least something to look at and make it a little easier to see. But okay, a date would be a good idea.
So we're thinking for the next meeting for clarification through you, Chair, we're going to bring back a revised energy management plan for your review and your comments. And we're going to be providing updated data, whatever that level of data and statistics are that we have. So do we think, to be realistic, do we want to wait a couple months before we meet again? Do we think there's any value added to come back within 1 month, to be truthful?
I would say, why not come back in a month? We
Okay.
don't necessarily need a 2-hour meeting.
No,
But establish our goals and priorities.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so that'll be the next item. We'll call goals and priorities. That'll give people a chance to think about it, digest the information you have. You can see when Bridget went through it, there's each of the sections that are categorized and colored of what we kind of already have in place or what we're doing. So maybe we can, refresh those or bring those back up to kind of the forefront. Do we want Leslie not to volunteer you, but does the rest of the group want a copy of what Leslie's speaking about, just for your own background information? Just
Even if it's just a
Yeah.
link, I'm sure
Yeah.
it's
it can't hurt.
Yeah,
It
100%.
can't hurt.
So are you comfortable to do reply to all to our group, or do you want me to do that? I don't mind sending it, whichever's easiest.
I can do a reply all. Yeah, that's no problem. It is really long, you guys. So I'll just try to kind of highlight where the best place is to go, just to get the gist of, what they're saying.
Wonderful, great, thank you.
Is there an audio version?
Yeah.
It's your text to speech.
Yeah, and then we could also. bring
Greta
back-
reads it word for word.
That's it.
I'm kidding.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Right.
And maybe we can bring some information about the codes acceleration.
Yeah, you'll be
Yes.
following up then, based on where we're at with that.
Yeah, very good. And if there's ever anything that comes up that has some measurable good in it, and depending on what it is, we'd have to do anything that could help us out. I mean, we're still at the infant stage where little things can be incorporated quite easily. So if something comes up, or unless you seem to have your finger on the pulse of new and exciting, if something comes up that says, we're now offering anyone that turns their street light off at night or puts it on at night an incentive of this or that, now's probably a good time to, anything that we can put into place now, or at least consider, may not hurt.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
Okay.
A pile may not be possible because it looks like we're all blind copied.
Oh, you would, because yeah, no problem.
Oh.
No problem.
Just
Okay.
I mean, Cindy,
Your first email would have been, your one I sent on the 21st, I had to call, pardon me, the email you did not, your first email was blind copied because you were not official then. But you
gotcha.
would have got an email, but our email was down unfortunately, which is why I had to call you and text it to you. So the next email, which I can do this if you'd like, Leslie, and I can just copy everybody because it's the same link you sent to Deputy Mayor Huntley and myself, correct?
it is. I was just going to try to take some time and kind of summarize it, because there's a link to like 100 page.
Oh,
Perfect. When you get that done, you send it to me and then I'll circulate it to the committee.
Perfect. That's
Perfect.
great.
that works.
Fantastic.
We haven't got a date. We're
So
looking at
meeting
it.
date.
So let's talk about meeting date, yes.
Later, we just,
Today is
Tuesday.
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 should work, like, can we start there?
The
Tuesday?
Tuesdays work for
Tuesday's
people?
fine, yeah, Tuesday's not bad for
Yeah,
me.
Tuesdays work.
Same time?
This is best time for me, but whatever.
Yeah.
What day are we looking at?
A Tuesday is as far as we've got so far.
Okay, yeah.
And we're thinking a month, so I'm thinking we're gonna look at probably the 18th to the 25th of April, 25th maybe?
18th is better for me.
18th is better for you, okay?
I'm not available on the 18th.
Also,
That's
Oh,
fine.
is the 18th conference, are you at Ogra?
Oh, yeah. no,
So you
no.
won't be here anyways,
All
okay?
right.
So the
It sucks.
25th, the 18th, what about the 25th? How everybody's schedules look for the 25th?
I can do the
Think right off the
Yeah,
bat.
25th.
I can do the 25th. Afternoons work better for me. I hope that's, I mean,
We're kind of aiming at the same time. We're gonna start,
Yeah.
we're whittling it down. Tuesdays works. Now it's, 1 o'clock. Does that work?
Does 1 o'clock work? What about your sleeping schedule?
Yeah, that's not bad. 1
Okay,
o'clock's
we don't
okay.
want you, okay.
yeah.
1 to 3 works, Leslie, good for you?
Yes, yep, that's perfect.
Okay.
You're gonna book 2? You'll probably even now.
Hold on, that's.
I think we'll book it from 1
Is
to
that
3,
Tuesday?
and then if we are less, so be it, and if, yeah, if that works for everybody.
Okay.
That way,
Well, that would be.
2 hours now.
So I think let's just get a motion just to accept the additional or the items to be added to the next meeting and our meeting date, which will be Tuesday, April, wow, that's crazy, April 25th from 1 till 3. Perfect.
Sure. And everyone present heard the terms and the point of the motion being carried forward. Do we have someone to say yay? Me. Yes, okay, we're ready to go.
Okay, Manny, and do we have a seconder for the
Second.
items? Perfect. So Joanne,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Manny,
Yes.
Kath, Deputy Mayor Huntley. And now the last motion,
best
the motion of
motion.
adjournment.
All in favor?
Motion to adjourn.
I second that.
We're adjourned.
So who was our mover, who was, sorry, you were
And
perfect.
I'm second.
Keith.
Either way.
And then we just need the recorded vote, which is never a hard one to get. Leslie,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Manny,
Yes.
Kath,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Oh, it's too much fun.
We are ready to
Joanne.
go. Yes.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Great.
all right.
Thank you,
Last
everyone.
word.
Everybody. Great, successful first meeting. You take care, Leslie, and we will be in touch shortly.
Great. Nice meeting everybody.
Bye, Leslie.
Take care.